Welcome to the third and final part of my conversation with Stephanie Bird on Tsitsi Dangarembga's This Mournable Body. In this part, Stephanie gives her recommendations for related reading. If you haven't yet watched or listened to the first two parts of the discussion, I suggest doing that first. And if you have any recommendations of your own, please do leave them in a comment below the video. Welcome to the third and final part of my discussion with Stephanie Bird on Tsitsi Dangarembga's This Mournable Body. If you didn't catch parts 1 and 2, I do suggest checking those out first. So, Stephanie, could you give us some recommendations on related reading to Dangarembga?
Yeah, the first two books I would obviously recommend are the first two novels in a trilogy that concern Tsitsi. So Nervous Conditions and the Book of Not, each very different, but really powerful, insightful novels. So a fantastic trilogy. Then picking up on our discussion of and it being sort of constrained in the present by the use of the present tense. This is a very interesting novel. Is it coming out the right way or is it in mirror form? Anyway, called Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson, which is also written in the U present tense and concerns a young British Ghanaian man. And there are similar themes in as far as it concerns the profound impact of systemic racism, this time, and this in this case on a man, and therefore is also an exploration of Black masculinity in a society where the individual, you know, the protagonist, is always aware that he is being seen as a part of a faceless, violent, threatening collective, you know, the threat of the young Black man, as opposed to the individual who he wants to become, and the very damaging, devastating effects that positioning has. So really quite an interesting parallel there between femininity, masculinity, the female body, the male body, Zimbabwe and its context, and here a challenge of the UK context, but with a similar narrative form. Then, in relation to Zimbabwe, I found this a very interesting novel. It's called House of Stone by Novuyo Rosa Chuma, and this is. There are parallels. First of all, it is dealing with quite explicitly with the silencing around, or the silence around, the Gukurahundi. It also and people not speaking about it and how to elicit the narrative of what happened. But that attempt to elicit the narrative is done by a really deceptive, unpleasant, manipulative narrator. So we have, yeah, it is a really dislikable young man. But so we have this idea of, again, how do we empathize? How is history manipulated to fulfill personal motivations? How are people invited to talk about them? And it's very interesting on Zimbabwean history and the responses to that history. So that's another book that I thought that I enjoyed reading, was interesting. Now, a bit of a leap, but this is this is picking up much more on what I said about history and trauma. This isn't a novel, although there are novelistic elements, and this is the Chinese author Yu Hua's China in 10 Words. In which it's I suppose one can call it a memoir, but he's talking about Tiananmen Square, the Chinese Revolution, the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, the Great Famine, and he's linking that extremely violent political history, devastating effects on individuals of violence. He's linking it to the present, often in very satirical, funny ways. So there's an interesting interplay of history, memory, trauma, and contemporary critique, but also a strong satirical comic element. How much more time have I got? This is a fascinating, in the realm of memoir now, less so novels, but to go much further back in time. This is the Hungarian version, not that I read Hungarian, but it's an author called Bela Scholt, and his memoir is called 9 Suitcases. And this is a memoir of the Holocaust written between 1946 and 1947. So in the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust, he was he escaped being gassed by escaping from the ghetto, and then escaping on a train, on the Kessner train from Hungary. And it was written in the immediate aftermath with a level of incisive gaze, treating with a front to what he experienced, that makes it very untypical of many later Holocaust representations, where there was already a sort of moral response to victimhood. The victims, the collaborators, the perpetrators are treated, they all come under his appraising gaze in a way that is sometimes quite shockingly funny. So that's that's another example of I mean, it has many extremely disturbing graphic scenes of violence, historical violence, but it also then is combined with this air of irony, sarcasm, wit, humor. And that is. So how about that, Ivan? Do you want any more?
That's great. I think that's a great spread. And some some sort of close to the, that Zimbabwe in that, that context, but some more, you described it as a leap. So some quite interesting connections there, but I think that gives people plenty to be getting on with. So good. Thank you so much for your recommendations. Thank you for joining me. That was a brilliant discussion, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for watching and listening.